All right, we would like to welcome everybody. We'll reconvene our open session, and if you could join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great, thank you. I'm not aware of any emergency additions or modifications.
There are none.
Great, we'd like to excuse Jane Weil, who is out of town and unable to be here. Can we get a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
I'll move to approve the agenda.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that's unanimous. And are there any comments that are not related to one of the two items on the agenda? So the trustee area or the superintendent? Any? Okay, why don't we wait for the item for the comments then? I think that makes sense. And the first item, this is the first hearing of it, so Andy, could you give us some background?
Sure. So this is a resolution before you that we are recommending approval that would initiate the process to consider transitioning from a current at-large election system for electing the 5 board members to a trustee area or a district. The city of Ojai just recently approved this transition, and the majority of municipalities and school districts in Ventura County, as well as across the state, are doing the same thing. The rationale for making this transition is that there is legislative intent, fear that with at-large districts or at-large elections that minority voting power is diluted. That if there is individual areas within a community that have a higher minority population than other areas, that by having at large, that community may not have the same level of representation. And so by going to the trustee areas, it's an attempt at addressing that concern. Again, it's something that the majority of districts and municipalities are transitioning to, in part because 2 years ago a statutory change granted the ability for law firms to put forward a letter of an accusation of failing to meet the California Voting Rights Act. If we were to be in receipt of that letter, then the ability of that law firm to collect up to $30,000 in legal fees initiates. It's up to $30,000, but from what we've heard, it always is $30,000. And so the majority of, including the city of Ojai, when they make this transition, often it is to avoid both that initial $30,000 fee as well as the potential litigation if the elected body doesn't move this direction. So this is only the first step. We will then have 2 public hearings where we will solicit public feedback on considerations when drawing up a proposal or options for considering district or trustee areas. We'll then put forward a proposal if it's continuing down that path. Once that proposal is made public, then we'll have 2 more public hearings before ultimately there's a possibility of asking you guys to approve a change. So again, this is just the initiating process to have us begin exploring this and begin the process of public hearings on the topic.
So are there any comments from the board, or is there a motion to approve the resolution?
I just want to say that, we've looked at this issue, and, it appears that we're essentially just a sitting duck right now waiting for some law firm to serve us with a letter, and that would give rise to $30,000 of expense, which we don't have. And we're not aware of anybody, any city or other elected body challenging the creation of districts. So you understand what we're talking about with districts. It would be geographic districts. So right now we're all chosen from, all we have to do is to qualify to be elected, we have to be within the boundaries of the Ojai Unified School District, and as long as we are, we put our name in the ring and or hat in the ring, and then we're elected if we're one of the top 3, depending on which election, or top 2 in a 2-person election. and that's that. Now it will instead be people will run from particular geographic areas, just like they do for Congress or anywhere else. So there'll be a literal map showing different districts for the school district, and we're going to begin the process of looking into that and potentially adopting that, which seems to be the logical and inevitable thing that we do now in response to the state of the law.
And just to clarify,
Yeah,
oh,
thank you.
sorry.
No, I think we're clarifying.
We are aware of jurisdictions who have litigated to keep the at-large status. We're not aware of any that have litigated and won.
Right.
Yeah, I'm sorry, did I
So
say?
you stopped halfway
What
through
I
that
meant,
thought.
I didn't finish the thought, yeah. That's why they didn't win. They didn't finish the thought.
Yeah, this is the trendy thing. It is based on a presupposition that there are underrepresented geographic clusters that are not adequately represented. It can have a kind of a sideways effect by fragmenting underrepresented voters across a district if they're not clustered geographically, but the presumption and the bias is in favor of geographic diversity. I think we're somewhere in between in the Ojai Valley, but what it does guarantee is that all the parts of the community will have representation, and I think that's important.
Well, there will be more to be said about this, and we will have, at least 2 public hearings and probably 4 meetings in all, right?
That's right, yeah. We'll have 2 public hearings before a proposal becomes public, then after that, there's 2 more public hearings.
So I have a lot more to say about it too. But for purposes of today, is there a motion?
I'll move to approve the resolution.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's
unanimous. Moving on to I think the reason why we're all here, because you didn't know about this first issue. Well, you did if you saw the notice, because it was fully noticed. The public hearing on the community's priorities for the hiring of the next superintendent. I just want to update you. We went through quite a long list of what the board has done to date in working on the selection process. I just want to update you that since we met last, we've come together and I put together a list of people who we think are representative of the community, that represent various groups, that represent various interests, and invitations will be going out to those people. It's a fairly long list. We don't know that everybody will be able to make it. We hope that as many who want to can. But I'm reluctant to tell everybody who's on the list, because if they don't show up, then I don't want them to look bad, right? So, but I think that you would be comfortable that it represents a lot of groups. So, anyway, why don't we, I think that's the only update on the process since our last meeting, so why don't we open it up for,
I'll move to open the public hearing.
oh,
I'll second.
well, that's wonderful. Aye. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And that's unanimous. So why don't we start with Steve Weed? And if anyone wants to fill out a form, feel free to do so.
Hello. Good to see you all again today. With the board's indulgence, I'd like to recommend that you each get a 50% pay raise. Yeah, I'm sure you've stopped counting the hours, and it seems like there's always something else on the agenda. So, again, thank you from the community. My comments were actually regards to 4.1, but that's okay. I've kind of said what I think is appropriate to say regarding the superintendent selection. So, in regards to the seemingly imminent approach to selecting board members from districts. I have several thoughts. I know it's going to be really challenging, even though we kind of already think where the dividing lines might show up within our school district. It's going to be interesting to see how that unfolds. What I would ask is that at some point there's mention of how the process is going. I know you probably still have a lot to work out that way, but I wish you all the best with that. Thank you.
Thanks. Roy Rodriguez, welcome.
Thank you. As Mr. Whipple said, my name is Roy Rodriguez. I'm a member of the committee of Ojai Alliance for Education Equity. I have made my home in Ojai since 1972. My career has been in education, all 38 years of it. I spent 5 years teaching in Los Angeles, and then 33 years teaching, counseling, coaching tennis, football at North High School. So I've seen a several number of superintendents and boards go by. So I think I have a pretty decent assessment of what I think is important in a new superintendent. So I'd like to read some of these for you, and I will leave a copy for you folks. I think, and there's 9 items, but I had it down, I had 20, but I thought that would just, I would keep you here till midnight. So, and these are not necessarily in the order that I would prefer. Number 1, I think of the new superintendent should be a person who possesses collaborative style leadership. 2, a person who has been in the classroom. I think that's really critical, and dealt with diversity and cares deeply about the complete education of each individual student. Number 3, a person who will commit to more than 3 years through a 3-year period, so that board policies, community policies, the wishes of the teachers can be implemented. So many times, and I don't know what the contract is for you, Andy, but there's so many that come in, they'll sign a 3-year contract, and then before you can actually implement anything, they're gone. And it's been consistent here in the Ojai Unified School District. I think Hank was the only one that remained for quite a while. Number 4, an individual who has had experience with curriculum issues, specifically dealing with equity, diversity, and inclusion of all students. 5, a person who will systematically sustain training to staff of the Ojai Unified School District on cultural awareness. And I think it's really crucial that that person who comes in start from kindergarten and work its way up, rather than start at the high school. Number 6, a person who is committed to cultivating a diverse workforce by making a commitment to support efforts to hire and retain teachers of color. Number 7, an individual who is committed to the social and emotional learning of every student in the Ojai Unified School District. Number 8, an individual who possesses cultural literacy, cultural proficiency, and provides the most effective tools for the district to respond to the diversity that we have in Ojai Unified School District. And then the last one, an individual who is confident and experienced in education and will require the same commitment of all administrators, teachers, and staff in the Ojai Unified School District. And I'm sure you will make a wise choice. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hey, Roy, what did you teach?
I'm sorry?
What was your subject?
I taught science, ESL science, biology, Spanish, typing. We're talking in the 70s, so it was like, you came in with a multi-credential and they used you, and I'll end it with this because I wanted to say that, but those 38 years were the best years of my life. I miss the kids, but I think when I retired, it was time for me to do something else. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Roy.
Thank you for giving that such thought.
Yeah, much appreciated. Angie Genesi. And I have to apologize. Everyone was quite good about writing down what they wanted to talk about, and I completely didn't read that. I do try to read things, though.
Well, you came in and got started, that's
There you
okay.
go.
I am Angie Genesi. I'm here tonight speaking for the Ojai Federation of Teachers. We had 3 areas that we wanted you to keep in consideration in hiring a new superintendent. We want someone who has ideas or strategies for dealing with one of the greatest issues in our district, declining enrollment. We would like to have someone who, based on our declining enrollment and the fiscal issues that are created because of that, we would really like you to think about hiring someone who can articulate a plan for recruiting and retaining quality educators. I think that we are coming up to a lot of retirements, and I think it's going to be an issue for us getting people to want to work here and then retaining them. I mean, at this point, I'm here, and I'm committed to Ojai, right? But if I was younger, I might be looking around at places where I could get more pay, and I think that's a consideration in the future. I feel like people in this district are very aware of that, and certainly the teachers are concerned about the quality of education that we're going to have if we don't recruit quality people and we don't retain people here. And then third, we would really want someone who has a track record of positive labor relations. We want to continue in the vein that we have had and make sure that we are collaborating and working together for the betterment of our entire district. Thank you.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
Angie.
Don't go too far. Okay.
Were those all the papers on your desk?
Yeah, so Annika, do you want to, as long as you're still standing.
I think Roy is submitting for the record his request in print. Mine is scrawled here in the last 5 minutes. I, along with Roy, hi everybody, I haven't seen you in ages. Nice to see all your faces. So with Roy, I'm also part of this newly forming group in development that we've named ourselves Ojai Alliance for Equity in Education. And as you may be aware, our concerns are largely focused on making sure everybody has an opportunity, and I think everybody's aligned around making sure that opportunities are present for everyone in our school district. And the specific qualities of a superintendent that I would personally love to see, and I think our group would love to see, and I think would really help our district hit all of our LCAP goals and recruitment goals and retention goals and family engagement goals, is I hope that our next superintendent is highly culturally competent with the cultures present in our district, specifically Spanish language. I'd love to see a bilingual, bicultural superintendent. I'd like to see somebody really championing the cause of inclusion of our non-English speaking families, championing, not just thinking that's a nice idea, but somebody who has a track record of experience implementing programs and processes across the district, equitably across all schools from elementary to high school, that are linguistically inclusive, processes down to the PTA, PTO, parent-teacher conferences, school events, graduate, everything, including the board meetings. So their linguistic and cultural competence, I think, is essential. But overall, somebody who has a track record of championing the causes of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I would be hoping that you'll be asking behavioral interview questions. I know Michael knows all about those. I would like to hear their stories of their prior experiences, turning things around in districts where we have chronic white supremacy outbursts. I would like to know that they would be champions. I would love to know they have a history of establishing and championing a shift towards restorative justice procedures and policies and practices, K to 12. Also, as Roy mentioned, the inclusion and establishment and sustenance of a K to 12 diversity awareness, cultural awareness curriculum culture to really change the culture in our district to bring around much more inclusiveness than what we've been seeing. And I'd love to see somebody who has a track record and experience establishing a dual immersion bilingual elementary program, because I think that's the ticket to bringing more enrollment into our district. So that's all I can think of at the moment. There's probably a lot more things.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rebecca Chandler.
Hi.
Hi.
Good afternoon. I am Rebecca Chandler. I am just speaking on behalf of a parent. So I have 3 sons, one of which graduated from Nordoff a couple years ago, and one currently at Miramonte Elementary School. But I'm also an educator. I'm the director of CTE for Oxnard Union High School District, and have worked in many different school districts across the county. And CTE, Career Technical Education, is my love and passion. So I might be a little biased here, but I would love to see our community of Ojai, which I have lived here for about 12 years, has such a rich community of people with so many amazing, diverse talents and attributes that should be flooding our schools. And right now, I can say from even a community member who is not super involved in our local schools, because I'm involved in other schools, I haven't seen that in my children's schools. And I would love to see how we could connect with our local businesses, how we can bring our community together, how we can watch that flow into a beautiful, unique school that isn't really offered anywhere else in the county. And I have worked all over the county. I think we have such an amazing opportunity to make that happen, and it's thus far hasn't happened to the fullest extent that I think it could. I think the issues that a lot of other people have discussed as far as cultural inclusion and awareness is we're currently lacking that in our schools, and I would love to see all of our diverse communities truly celebrated in what we do. And I agree, like the fiscal element that we are facing as a district, and I was looking at the forecast of continued declining enrollment as our district, which is super scary because that's our money, right? And so we really need a superintendent who knows how to bring funds into the schools. Grant writing is critical, and I would love to say that we could hire a superintendent who could hire a grant writer, but quite honestly, we need a superintendent who has that ability to make that happen, and we need more funds coming into our schools from alternative ways, because it's not going to come from our traditional student enrollment. It's just not. So, but I do think that we could attract outside districts if we could really develop and exploit how amazing our community is, and people would want to be here. And it would also bring more people into our community. So I think we have a huge opportunity to build a very unique, successful school district. But I feel like if we keep processing the school district like it's a 1,000 person, 2,000 person, 3,000 person, it will not thrive. We have to find a new way. So, that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any other comments? Anything from the board? Well, actually, the public comment section, if there are no further, we could close the public hearing.
Are there no other comments? Are you sure? Then I'll move to close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that's unanimous. Aye. Comments from the board? Well, from me, I really appreciate the thoughtfulness of all the comments shared tonight. I think that there's a lot of truth and value to what's been said. And, honestly, it's probably impossible to find one person who has all of the virtues that have been listed. I don't know that Mary Poppins is going to fly in, but we want to get as much as we can, and finding somebody who can bring the kind of skills that are going to help our district is absolutely important.
Yeah, I have to appreciate people taking the time after a long day to give us what actually turned out to be, I think, really significant and relevant feedback. I mean, very often you go to public forums and you start getting blue sky, things all, if we had unlimited this and unlimited that. But tonight, I think you gave us some really good and relevant and timely guidance, and I appreciate you taking the time and the thinking. So, thank you.
A couple of things. One is, it's come up twice, at least. Roy, you mentioned it also. So I happen also to be a lawyer. I'm not an HR guy like Michael, but who's also a lawyer. But you cannot, certainly in California, you cannot enforce an employment contract to force somebody to keep working for you if they decide to leave. So we're not in a position, no matter what we do, to compel a person to work for us for X number of years. It's impossible legally. And I will say, because I guess there's an undercurrent with respect to our current superintendent, and he's obviously leaving sooner than we all had hoped. But I really believe, if you know Andy and if you know his story, you'll know that it really was a kind of a once in a lifetime situation that caused him to feel the need to take this other opportunity. But I really, I want to say to you, Andy, I know it would have only been such an opportunity that would have pulled you away, because I really do believe that Andy, was in the exact right place when he took this job. And one other thing I wanted to mention, because we talked a little bit about the recruiting, and last week at the end, a person had said, hey, step up and spend the money on a professional recruiter so we can get the right candidate. Well, in this era of the internet, people who are interested in being superintendents know where to look to see what jobs are open, and we are quite confident that we have had the opportunity to really look at all comers. And you may quibble with us about whether our judgment is sufficiently good on the subject, that we should have hired professionals to winnow down the candidate pool or to help us see who the right candidate should be. But in terms of feeling like we really have gotten input from every person out there in the world, essentially, who's interested in coming to OI and being our superintendent, we really feel like we've gotten that, and we feel like we have some quality candidates. And I will say personally, as I thought about running for office again and taking on this job for another 4 years, really, to me, the biggest issue is the trying to create, which we don't have right now, a truly whole school district where everybody is, you know, in it together and feels like they all have just as much access and just as much resources, et cetera. And it is very hard. You know, it's not all pull and it's not all push, but it takes two to tango. And certainly you have to send the right message, and you have to have the right programs, et cetera. And we're going to keep working on it, but I agree, that's a big part of what our new superintendent needs to tackle. And then on the enrollment front, absolutely, I agree. You know, I think all of us feel like if we can somehow harness this unique environment we have in Ojai to become an Oak Park, or, you know, a place that people want to come when it comes to public school, that, you know, I know Angie, we've talked about this in the last several years, you know, what we can realistically aspire to do. And I think I aspire to do that. I agree that is, because demographics is not something you can change, but you can change, you can bring people potentially to a district through innovative offerings. I think that bilingual possibility is a fabulous one, and to be continued.
Hey, can I say something?
Sure.
First, I just want to thank Andrew. And I wasn't addressing my comment to you, it's just that in the past, it's been more than not. So, and I appreciate the fact that you're looking out for your family, and the opportunity presented itself to not only elevate yourself in terms of your goals, but I do want to thank you for the time you spent here in Ojai. Because I am so proud of the fact that I was able to get a job here, even though I missed LA, I really did, because it's different, you know. So my kids went through the system, and I couldn't have been more pleased with the staff. They did well, and they graduated, and they did well in college. So that's a very special part of having kids go through the system and live here in this beautiful place, like you said, Cal. So if we can recruit as much of those requirements that we all say, and you know, I think this person has to have genes from Mahatma Gandhi, Sigmund Freud, Barack Obama.
Not to mention walking on water.
It's going to be a really challenging time for you folks. So I'm sure you'll do a great job, and I want to thank all of you, because I've been in that position of giving to the community, but it's a really, really very fulfilling part of who we are. Because if it wasn't for you folks and folks like this up here, like Mike said, nothing would get done. So we need to voice our agreement, our disagreement, and work together. So I appreciate what you do.
Thank you.
Perfect, thanks.
Should have had you on the microphone, but we'll tell people what you said.
I'm sorry. I can write it down.
For those watching at home, it was really nice. Shelley, I think you were.
I just, I kind of lost my thought. It was, you took me on a different tangent. I was just gonna echo, you know, what you were saying, Kevin, about the decision that we made to not go with a firm, to hire a firm. And also with Michael's thanking you all, I think part of the firm's job is to sift through and winnow it down for us. But one of the things that I value that this board decided to do was really listen to the community and know the community as we winnow it down ourselves, and take our time to hear what you have to say and really look at these candidates and try to match that. But your time is so valuable, and I so appreciate you coming and sharing with us so that we can do our job as well as we can. Because without you guys, we really can't do this job.
Without kids coming to their school, without buy-in from you guys, then we have no school district.
Continuing the thought on the search firms, as we were looking at what the offerings were, as mentioned before, that the two big things they do for you are they take the pool of resumes, they review them, and they give you what they think would be best for you. And then the other thing they do is they organize some community meetings. And I think that we've had some great community meetings, that there's been great input from you. We have heard, through surveys and through other means, other comments that people have made. So I think that we've gotten some good input from the community. And in terms of the winnowing down process, I think there's a lot to be said for not winnowing it down. With a board that's willing to look at every single candidate, I think there's a value to that. Where an outside firm might say, well, this person, is not the kind of person you want. Isn't it better for us to decide whether that's the kind of person we want? So anyways, maybe it's been a little bit more work on our part, but I think that, I feel better about not wondering whether there was somebody that an outside firm rejected that we would have wanted to talk to.
Can you just tell us where you are kind of in the arc of the process at this point?
Sure. I'll reiterate some of the points made before. We have we've reviewed a lot of resumes. We have narrowed that down to a few of the very top candidates. We have selected a panel of community representatives that will be contacted in the next day or two.
Hour.
I wanted to give us a little a little breathing room there, but yeah, maybe yeah. Soon after we leave this meeting, and then on I believe it's the 23rd, Saturday, we'll be having a very long session. That panel is going to have a chance to meet the three top candidates, to ask questions, to interact with them, and then provide feedback to us. And then we're going to have to do the hard work of taking all of the comments that we've heard here tonight, all of the survey responses from the community and the teachers, and sift through that and try to come to a decision. So we really think that there will be a selection before the end of the month. And hopefully about a week before the end of the month. But we're hoping that it will be before the end of the month.
Are there other questions or things that you wanted to hear from us tonight?
I have questions.
Yeah.
I didn't have comments, so I wasn't sure,
Sure.
You don't really respond to the comments, so I wasn't sure.
Yeah, well, if it's agendized,
Sure.
we can.
Oh, okay.
What happens a lot is someone will ask us a question in a meeting that's not on the agenda, and then it's illegal if we answer it, which is kind of dumb, but that's.
Would you like me to go up for?
Feel free,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
And sometimes, sometimes we might be criticized for being a little too informal here, but I don't think
I
that's
just
a
want to
big
do whatever
problem.
you need to be done. I
Yeah,
don't,
no, feel
you know,
free.
I wanted to follow the rules. So I just have just a bunch of questions. This is my first time. So I'll just say my name is Blair Brainy. I was born and raised here in Ojai. Went to the school system. My parents went to the school system. My children are now going to the system. I've got 3 little kids. My oldest in first grade, and then I have 2 that will be. So I will be in this district for a long time to come. My questions are.
Do we have any internal candidates?
We have all kinds of candidates. I don't want, here's the other issue.
Okay.
There are some things we're reluctant to answer because if we do or if we don't, and if we identify who those people might be, and then we don't select them or whatever, it's an awkward situation.
Okay.
So, but we do have a lot of variety in our candidates.
Great. So you have 3 candidates right now, or
We have 3
3
candidates.
top candidates? Cool. Is the salary competitive to other superintendent positions in? I end up making a big no.
It's not,
Not at all. Nowhere near. Nothing.
that's right.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
It's as much as we can afford,
Sure. Sure.
but no, it's not competitive. It's just like our teacher salaries are not competitive.
Sure.
Yeah.
Why is that? I do not understand.
It's,
I just
it's-
don't know the ins and outs
It's,
of the
yeah,
financial
it's
streams.
the
Yeah.
budget math.
Got it.
The way it works when you're in declining enrollment and the situation where we are, we're not small enough or poor enough.
Right.
And we're not rich enough or have enough students.
Okay.
You know, we're
Kind
in
of
that
stuck in the
area
middle spot.
where the math doesn't work for us.
Yeah. I was gonna say that's what they call the donut hole in like medical
Yeah.
healthcare, right? Or they used to have it. Okay. Do all the candidates have experience in education, being an educator?
I believe that all of the candidates have experience in the classroom.
Is there a plan if?
You said you had a question. You've got a lot of questions.
I
No,
did have a
that's fine.
list of
Keep 'em coming.
questions. That's what I was. They're not
just
comments,
wanted
but I
to
have a
com-
list of
I just
questions.
wanted to comment.
Is there a plan if, because I know there's been, I was just talking to another teacher in the district, and there's other districts in Ventura and Santa Barbara that didn't use any kind of firms, which I'm totally fine with not using firms. I don't have an issue with it. Not that it matters anyway if I did, but where it didn't work out and they're paying for 3 superintendents. And like, is that possible? Would we have to deal with that? Because they still have to pay out the contract for the superintendents that didn't work out for whatever reason. And so they're still paying multiple
Right, yeah.
contracts. And so do we have a plan if that happens? Would that ever happen? Could we afford to do that? Like that, could that situation happen here? And if it did, do we have a plan to deal with it?
So Andy, you're probably the best answer.
Sure.
You know, there are, essentially what you're describing is we would hire somebody, it doesn't work out.
Yeah.
We terminate them, and then we have to pay them
Right.
some
Piece of their contract.
yeah, some, basically, you know.
Buyout.
Yeah, so
Buyout.
state law allows for no greater than a 12-month severance clause. So
Okay.
the lesser of 12 months or the remaining term.
Okay,
So if a superintendent, if they're dismissed without cause,
sure.
they're just dismissed for cause, it's 6 months.
Oh, okay.
So if they're dismissed without cause, and let's say they had a 2-year contract and they'd been here a year and a half, then the most that could be potentially the district be responsible for would be the remaining 6 months.
Okay,
That would be so it's
okay.
no greater than 12 months or the remainder of the term. If it's
Okay.
for any reason the board just decides they want to go a different direction.
Yeah.
If it was for something that was considered in breach of the contract, then it's only 6 months.
Okay.
Which means it would be hard to believe that there's districts in Ventura and Santa Barbara that are paying off multiple
I spoke to a teacher
superintendents.
today at daycare, and he's talked about there's a in Ventura. I don't know what particular district, but they're
They've
on
had
their
to-
third superintendent, and they're paying the 2 others. And I was
They,
just like,
they're
what
not
did I
paying
do?
for the one prior, but you're correct that they will
Okay.
be paying for the current one, and the most recent one is
Yeah.
on salary until August
Okay.
on payroll.
Okay.
So we do, just to answer your question, you know, we get into the nitty gritty, and we have
Yeah.
2 lawyers on
Yeah.
the board, and we get into all aspects of the negotiation and
Cool.
all provisions, and we try to have a fair
Right.
contract, but we're totally mindful of that. I remember
Cool.
actually when we hired Andy, I was very aware of that issue and concerned about
Oh,
it.
good. Cool. Good to hear. Let's see. Do any of the candidates? I know you mentioned it's desirable to have candidates that have experience with districts in declining enrollment. Do any of them actually have experience? I mean, because since you guys have looked at the resumes, you can say yes or no, that they do have experience with dealing with declining enrollment? Or is that an
I
identifier?
think maybe that would be something to pursue in an interview
Okay.
and find out.
So we're not sure yet if those three candidate finalists have experience in declining enrollment.
I think we could guess, but I don't know
Okay.
that we necessarily have a definitive.
Okay. Do we know if they have experience in improving low-performing schools, with Matilaha and Miramonte just getting on the list of low-performing schools in the state of California? Miners Oaks, I'm sorry, yes, Miners Oaks and Matilaha.
No.
No,
it's
Miners
Myers
Oaks. It is
and
Miners
Ottawa.
Oaks.
Do you,
Yeah.
would you like to?
Yeah, sure.
So going back to your prior question, 2 do and 1 does not. Your prior question being
Oh, okay, got it, got
experience
it.
in declining
Oh,
enrollment.
okay, so two do. Got it.
Your question that you just asked, all 3 have experience working in, or I'm sorry, it was this question was low performing. Yes, all 3
Yeah.
have experience with low performing schools and school districts.
Do they have experience in improving low-performing schools?
Wow, the devil's
How do
in
you,
details
yeah,
there.
how do you measure that?
That was like the part I forgot in my stint.
Yeah.
That would be the interview question
That would be an
to know
interview question.
the
Okay.
level into which their
Okay.
leadership accomplished that.
Okay, great. Okay, let's see. How is the list for the panel participants that you'll be emailing in an hour determined?
I'm not,
I'm joking,
Yeah.
but like, or in a day or two, 24 hours, 48, whatever,
Right,
whatever.
right.
How is that, how did you guys make the decision on who the community members were that would be on the panel to interview the final 3
well,
candidates with you?
what we wanted to do was make sure that all the major constituent groups in the valley that related to schools, and some that even don't relate to schools, were included. And so we started out by looking at what the groups are, and then who would best represent those groups.
Okay, so you guys just kind of like did a brainstorming session and reached out to people who you thought would
Something like
represent
that.
those?
We
Okay.
haven't reached out to anyone at this point.
Oh, right, but you made your list of
Yeah.
who you want to reach out to. Got it. Cool.
Can you share who the groups are? Sorry if I.
We
Good question.
did, that's the part, we don't want to prejudice it by, if somebody's not there, that they don't care. And there's, I will share that there are some groups that we are reaching out to, and that will say, look, if you can't be there, we want somebody from your group to be there. There are other people who it's really more about the person than the group, because we feel that they can contribute to the dialogue.
Okay, that was it. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Great questions. Good. Thoughtful questions.
I have another question.
Yeah, sure.
And I don't know if this, I know it's not possible for Andrew to be involved. It's only the board that elects the superintendent. But the question is to you, Andy. With your experience here, the wisdom you've gathered, does it ever happen where you sit with the board and say, in my 3 years here, I think I assume you heard all the conversation about people like us that come and share qualities that the superintendent should have. Do you ever sit down and say, I think we might want to head in this direction? And has that happened?
So
Can I just quickly say something, like, give you time to think a little bit more? But I
Don't bail them out there.
no, I mean, I really want to say, because I don't think he's a humble guy, very, very smart and very qualified, but not one to really blow his own horn. And he has provided us amazing input and thoughts about not only qualities and traits, but the team we have and the team we need to have. He's been in the trenches here, and he's provided us some invaluable input and support. throughout the process. As you would hope a superintendent would for a board, but he really has. He's stepped up to the, plate, and I feel like he's really hit a home run in providing input and providing, okay, you go.
Well, can I
Thank you.
piggyback back on that real quick?
Yeah.
'Cause, he has done that, but I would also add, only ever at our request. And so the weighted, rather than just saying, here's what I think, it was, do you want my opinion? And I think that was an important component to allow the board to decide how involved we wanted him to be.
And the board, I mean, I think from being here and listening to us on occasion, that sometimes we have opinions and sometimes they're pretty strong opinions, and we, we have expressed times where, we want his opinions, and we've expressed times when we didn't want his opinions and involvement. And ultimately, the decision is up to the board members. And we're not shirking that. We're here and engaged, and we're going to work hard to make sure that we make the decision. And I believe that at the end of the day, we're all going to agree on a great candidate. But I can guarantee you that we're not necessarily all going to agree with each other up to that point.
Lastly, he's on the group. He will be among the people that we are asking. This is your email.
Thanks. I'll block out the day.
Then have another one.
Yeah.
I'm fine not answering. I don't need to.
As a teacher, in-house versus outside. Meaning, are you looking at a candidate that's in the system now?
We will look at anybody. I don't want to identify who we're looking at this point because I don't think that's fair to the candidates. But we're looking everywhere. We're not leaving any stone unturned. If the stone is here in Ojai, we're going to turn it over. If the stone is somewhere else, we're going to turn it over. Yeah.
I would like to ask a question just on that's not from the unions, but just for myself. And one thing I really feel like we need going into the future is someone who can think outside the box. I mean, that's one of the things that you have brought to our district, where you'll think outside the box and then be able to show and explain what where your thinking is. And it's really, really helped us. And I feel like that's something that we really need in terms of recruiting new students and not just thinking outside the box, but being willing to think through the solutions that come up. And like, I can think of a million solutions to things, but we always need somebody who can do the steps to get to that point. And I just feel like that we need a leader that can help us do that. If it's a dual enrollment program, or if it's whatever it is, we have an issue in our district because there's a lot of small schools that have issues with declining enrollment, but they don't have a million, how many private schools do we have that we compete with, which always creates an issue for us. And I feel like the person that we hire really has to be a person who sees that as not just something but as an opportunity for creativity, and an opportunity to bring everybody together and say, hey, let's do this, and then we can draw people into our district. Because you've said it at, I think, every meeting, we have such incredible volunteers here. We have amazing parent groups here, and they're ready to do whatever needs to be done. We just need that leadership to say, hey, this is what our focus is. But we have to have an outside the box kind of thinker, I think, because otherwise we just kind of keep moving. And your outside the box thinking was fiscal, and that's where your creativity has been, which has really, really helped us. And so now I feel like we're on the right path, and we have to kind of keep the steam going, keep the train moving, so, anyway.
And the other thing I hear you saying is being able to communicate that outside the box idea. Not
Well,
just have the
and-
ideas, but bring people along with you and
Have the
explain it.
ideas, be able to articulate a plan, see the opportunities and people in our district, not just, and we have incredible teachers who are ready to move something forward.
Mhm.
We have groups like Food for Thought and, with the Bravo program, we have all these different programs that are ready to keep us going, just to do it. We have the Ojai Alliance for Education and Equity, who's ready to support anything that we can do in terms of equity, cultural bias issues. And we have it here, but we need somebody who now that we're sort of moving along and we can at least breathe it for now in terms of our finances, I think that kind of person we need that person who can say, not just keep us on the same path, but like really, really push us forward and grab people from the side and kind of I just see Ojai as having such an opportunity for that. And we don't ever, we're always struggling, right? And I always see struggle as an opportunity. There's no reason for it not to be, because creativity comes out of struggle and you find amazing solutions that way. So I would like to see somebody who has that kind of creative thinking, not just the regular run-of-the-mill, I can do this, I can be a superintendent, I can do all these pieces. Well, we want all those pieces, and then we want this other piece. And I know it's asking one more thing, right? But that one more thing seems to me to be critical. I don't know how to get that.
I agree. I think sorry, I interrupted you. You were gonna answer about how great.
Would you like me to answer this question? I think you guys did answer the question largely. I'll just reiterate, Kevin mentioned, he knows my heart, knows, the thought process that my wife and I went through from 3 years ago when we accepted the superintendency to our decision ultimately to decide to make this transition. We truly love Ojai. I've lived in, I think, 8 towns between my collegiate and professional career. Every community thinks that they're unique and special. Ojai is the only one that truly is. There is something unique and special. I don't know if it's the vortex or what it is, but we love this community. I love the staff who I've worked with, love this district. And so there's no question my number one responsibility between now and July 8th is to help make sure that our district continues on and grows on and builds on what we've been trying to do over the past number of years. So we have many important things going on this spring, but to me, the most important one that I'm working on is supporting this board and identifying the right leader for this district. So at the end of the process, if they desire to know my opinion on each of the 3 candidates, they will certainly know. There will be no ambiguity. I will not shy away from sharing my full thoughts.
Thanks. Anything else? For those of you watching, you missed out. You could have asked. Right? You're pounding on the table saying, I wish I were there so I could ask this question. Well, you should have been here. Anyway, thank you all. And we'll adjourn for tonight and push forward.